Hello, hello. Big welcome, everyone. Good to see all of you on the line this afternoon. Firstly, before we start, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. As for me, I'm dialing in from the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank you for dialing in at your lunchtime from all across Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and might be others. Today's session is really designed to highlight why is a day zero investor your best bet. We will delve into it a little bit. You're definitely in for a treat today. But before that, I'm Rani. I'm the community manager and scouting here at Antler. And also in the call are Joel, our scouting director, and Stefan, our director of Queensland. This afternoon, our very own Joel will be sitting down for a conversation with not one, but two of our portfolio company founders who have successfully built and launched their companies with us. We have with us today Ben from Braiv and Millie from yesterday. Also, to let everyone know, this is actually just the first edition of our AMA, and we'll have one every second Tuesday of every month throughout April to July to shed more light on the diversity of experience and profile of founders we back and their journey with Antler. So count yourself in on those as well, and we hope to see more of you. I'll send the link in the chat box soon. Alrighty, I'll pass this shortly to Joel to do an introduction about Antler and moderate today's session. But before we kick off, I just want to go over some general housekeeping. Again, this is an Ask Me Anything session. So at any point of the conversation, please feel free to contribute by addressing your questions or comments on the comment section. And we'll also have a dedicated time for Q&A to answer any of your burning questions later on. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking, just to avoid any background noise. Please do use the raise hand button if you want to ask your question, but please mute yourself before that. And if possible, please keep your camera turned on so we can see who you're speaking to. All right, so now let's get into it. Joel, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, Rani. And again, welcome to everybody. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of information about what Antler is and just kind of set the scene for anyone who's new here or doesn't know too much about us. And then we'll get into the panel discussion and the Q&A. As Rani mentioned, like the point of today really is to get questions from anyone in the audience. So you can either put your questions in the comment box on the side or raise your hand and we can take some questions at the end. So firstly, a little bit about Antler. Antler is one of the most active early stage investors globally. And realistically, it's only been around since 2018. So in those kind of 5 years, we've expanded to 25 locations across 6 continents with more than $1 billion of assets under management and we've made over 1,000 investments globally. In Australia, we have around 100, we've made around 100 investments and we've still got 81 portfolio companies. We do have physical locations in Sydney and Melbourne. And for anybody who is accepted into the Antler program, there is a physical in-person requirement to be, building your business with us in our offices in Sydney and Melbourne. Really excitingly, we have recently started a presence in Queensland, and we will be hopefully running some in-person cohorts soon. So I'd also like to introduce Stefan, if you want to come and say a quick hello and tell people a little bit about Queensland. He's also on the call.
Thanks, Joel. Hello, fellow Queenslanders. Thanks for joining the call. As Joel mentioned, to participate in the August cohort, which is the next cohort coming up, you would go down to Sydney and Melbourne to meet potential co-founders, to meet the Antler team for a few weeks, not the entire time that the cohort runs. We've had half a dozen companies in Queensland, founders in Queensland, start their companies with Antler by attending in person in Sydney and Melbourne. So it's basically a bit of a business trip down there in order to get kicked off. But then we're happy to work with you here in Queensland. And now, by virtue of the fact that I'm located here, I've been coaching and rolling up my sleeves and helping portfolio companies. So really appreciate all of you Queenslanders that joined the call. I'm going to throw it back over to Joel. You can always reach out to me, ping me, and be happy to chat with you about what we're up to here in Queensland. Thanks, Joel.
Awesome. Thank you. And all right, cool. So a little bit about Antler. So we recruit really diverse and exceptional founders, and you're going to get to hear from a couple of them very soon. But basically, we look for 3 types of founders. The first is tech and product builders. So here's a few examples on the left-hand side here of some of the tech founders that we've invested in over the last couple of years. And it's really important for us that the people that we consider as tech builders are actually builders. So if, for example, you've been a CTO, but you've been off the tools for 10 years, we wouldn't really put you in the tech bucket. We'd probably put you more in the business side of things, because we really need at this early stage, pre-seed, that our tech founders are actually able to build products. The second one is our business operators, our commercial founders. These types of people usually come from either high-level sales and marketing backgrounds, or they previously ran their own companies before they're exited founders, or they've led large businesses or large teams. And the third category is domain experts. So domain experts can come from a bunch of different areas. Usually they've worked in one industry for 10 plus years, so they really know that industry inside out. They know the problems faced in that industry, and they've generally been able to identify an opportunity to build a business in their area of expertise. Sometimes they look like PhD candidates as well, or someone who's looking to commercialize research that they've done. And they're looking for either a business or a tech person to help them build that business. So another thing that you'll notice about a lot of the founders is that they're generally pretty tenured. I think in our last residency, the average work experience was around 15 years. Now, this doesn't mean that if you're a young person who's starting out your career that you're ineligible for Antler. But generally what it means is that we are looking for people who either have a really unique insight into an industry, or are able to bring together, bring skills that they've acquired over their career to the table. But again, we really are open to anyone from any background, any level of education. And so, please, if in doubt, still apply or get in touch with us, and we'll let you know if you're suitable. So another really cool part about Antler is that we're industry agnostic, and we've invested in a really, really wide range of companies. Obviously, every VC loves their B2B SaaS and enterprise SaaS companies, but we'll also invest in anything from health tech, green tech, ed tech, all kinds of businesses. And so realistically, doesn't matter what you're wanting to build or building, it's always, as I said before, better to speak to us first, because we don't really have a mandate. Our mandate is, investing in awesome founders. So since 2019, we backed around 300 founders in Australia, which is, around 100 companies. Here are some of the interesting ones that have, been really successful over the past couple of years. Path Zero, which was founded by Carl. They provide solutions to collect and communicate carbon data. Upcover, which is an insurance tech product led by Sky. And also Zalient. So if you want to find out a little bit more about these companies or any other companies, there's a portfolio section of our website, which you can go to. You can filter it by location. So if you want to see all of the Australian portfolio companies, or you can also filter it by sector if you're interested in seeing what we've built in any sectors that you know well. Cool. Awesome. All right. So with that out of the way, I'd love to introduce Millie and Ben. So I'm going to kick off a few questions for you guys. Again, I just want to reiterate that if anybody has any questions, please pop them in the chat. And, we will take questions on mic as well. So if you do have a really burning question, please feel free to raise your hand and we can get you to ask a question. So we might start with you, Millie. Do you want to just give me a little bit of a brief snapshot about your background before joining Antler and how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started essentially straight out of uni. I started an e-commerce business, which failed. And then I went on and started a marketing agency with a couple of co-founders. And throughout that time, I'd always been building. I fell into headhunting with my old mentor, so got lots of experience to that market as well. So I guess I really just found a passion for startups. So that was what really drew me to Antler. I definitely was not someone who had 15 years experience. So yeah, I definitely would say it was just an overall appetite for building and playing in the startup space.
And how were you thinking about what type of business were you thinking about when you were joining Antler? Did you have a pretty clear idea of what it was going to be, or were you open?
No, I was open. So I actually pitched an idea that I never pursued. And I was very relieved when I found out that I didn't actually have to build that business that I pitched in the initial application. But I had been tinkering with different, we built little software tools over many, many years. But I really came to Antler for, I guess, some sort of almost roadmap or startup school, which is exactly what I got. So a really clear path to validate, and then also obviously how to raise capital.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we'll dive into yesterday a little bit later, but I want to flick over to Ben. And yeah, Ben, if you can give us a little bit about your backstory and kind of how you got here.
Yeah, no dramas at all. Thanks, Joel. So unlike Millie, I guess, I've been in corporate my entire life. So I've worked for corporates for depressingly about 20 years now, predominantly in sales roles. But I've always been a bit of a geek, hand on heart. So I've always had the desire to take an idea, build something and call it my own. So I guess it's interesting. Whilst I've been corporate all my life, I have always had this innate desire to be an entrepreneur of some variety. I went through my old Dropbox folders the other day, and I have scaffolds and even code from iPhone apps that I tried to build for like personal safety. I built a WordPress site that was going to aggregate lots of music and articles that were called EDM-tastic. But none of these went anywhere. And I always kind of held myself back because, I was young, I didn't have any money, I needed a job. So I just kind of settled in the corporate zone until I hit the ripe old age of 40 and thought, you know what, no, let's actually give this one a real shot. So essentially quit a relatively high profile role at Apple in the education space. And I wanted to build an education platform built around Web3. And eventually that journey took me to Antler. So I'll kind of maybe hold off and save that full story for later. But in short, been corporate all my life, but always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And thanks to Antler, here we are.
Yeah, cool. I mean, one thing I want to definitely highlight is that I see a lot of the people who apply to Antler are tinkerers and always have this story of like, I've tried this, I've tried that. It's very rarely the person who comes and says, this is the first time I've ever tried to do anything and now I'm here. A lot of people have this story of like, they're just interested in technology, and they're always trying to figure out, how they can be involved. So I'm really glad that you, took that first step. While we're still with you, Ben, let's dig into a little bit more of your, process through the Antler journey, because although you did get the funding in the end, I guess your journey was maybe not the typical journey through the Antler process. Do you want to expand a little bit on that and kind of, tell us how your journey was?
Yeah, happily. And I guess I could probably summarize a lot of it with, I joined Antler and immediately realized I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And Antler was able to point me in the direction of doing that. So I guess the long and short of it is I came to Antler as part of one of the cohorts with a particular idea. And again, so this was an education platform, online education platform that I wanted to build upon Web3. So the concept of self-custody of your certificates or your micro-credentials, wanted to wrap in some AI, all those buzzwords. And part of that journey was I learned about the concept of you need a problem to solve. You need to figure out what the solution is. You need to validate that solution. And then you need to go off and do your due diligence to make sure that that solution is actually market, is fit for market. And I learned all of that at Antler, which was phenomenal. And as part of the journey, I actually got from joining Antler all the way through to IC, to investment committee. And as part of that journey over the many, many weeks it was, I joined up with an amazing CPO, Dorina, and then we brought on who was going to be a CTO and is actually now the CTO for our company we're building now. So little old me with an idea, got to investment committee, 3 folks, got to IC, done all this work, and no investment. Boo. And
Denied.
me being denied, and me being the stubborn monkey that I am, I was just like, all right, no. This isn't. I'm not going to take in all of this time, even the time prior to Antler, to just call it quits. That's not how I roll. But we did recognize part of the whole journey was, okay, maybe this idea isn't market ready. That's okay. So we've shelved it, and CPO, unfortunately, she went off. She's doing her own thing. She started her own design agency. Awesome. But me and James went off and just had 1,001 conversations. And it ended up settling on, we wanted to take this video player that was going to be for our online education platform. And instead of it being as part of our platform, let's build this player that can be universal for any education platform. And that's how the idea for Braiv kind of spawned. And yes, we went through the whole motions again. We rapped on Antler's door, tracked out, and eventually we got to IC and we made it. And now we're building. It's just, stubborn, resilience, whatever you want to call it. But kept trucking.
Yeah, definitely resilience. And again, like, it's one of the amazing founder stories that I love, when, you just do not take no for an answer. And I think that's, a really good quality for any founder to have. Whilst we're on Braiv, do you want to just give a little plug about what it is and how it works? And then we'll move over to Millie.
Yeah, no dramas. I'll try and make this swift. So basically, one of the key lessons I learned at Antler in the first cohort was the validation element of it. You can't just have a cool idea. That's not enough. You have to validate that idea makes sense in the real world. So when we went from Accoladium, which was the education platform, and thought, right, Braiv, this is the platform that we actually want to start working on again. We took all the best elements of like this one feature that we had at Accoladium, and we were like, right, how can we productize this in a market that makes sense? So the lesson that was learned from me was, have every conversation you can possibly have. It really doesn't matter who it's with at the beginning, at least, because this is all part of that validation process. And for you are hopefully forever learning from every conversation. Some people will say, no, that's trash. Some people will be like, oh my gosh, I need that now. And through those conversations, you will figure out not just the product, but the market, and therefore the go-to-market. So what is Braiv? Braiv is essentially a platform that started off inherently as a video player that was going to allow to streamline captioning translating, and dubbing the language of videos for marketers. But through conversations, we realized that marketers need more than just a video player on their website that can do all of this stuff. They need to be able to share all of that content across their various socials, especially if they're a global organization. They might have 3 or 4 different YouTube channels for different cultures or different backgrounds that they're marketing towards, and also gathering those insights as well. So we're basically taking a platform that wants to democratize the ability to take any marketing video, caption it, translate it, dub it, share it, deliver it, and all of that is wholly automated. The vision being upload a video to our platform, set it to a workflow that you've built, go grab a coffee. And by the time you come back, it's ready for your global audiences.
Nice.
And apparently people love that idea. And so we're chuffed to build it.
It is. It's a great idea. Awesome. Okay, cool. So Millie, let's jump back over to you. Do you want to give us a little bit of a flavor of your experience at Antler, meeting Katsu, and kind of how your journey worked?
Absolutely. So I came into Antler super last minute. I think I applied on like the last day it was open, and that was actually the day I found it, which is just so ironic.
Oh, really?
Actually it popped into my head. I was like, oh, I feel like I should do an accelerator, and then Googled it, found it, applied, and I'm pretty sure I had my interview that day. It was so rapid. So I really knew nothing. Absolutely. That's process was so fast. I didn't even have time to look into really what I was signing up for, which was, I think, a really happy accident, because I think I would have been worried that I wasn't good enough or what have you. So yeah, obviously really glad I took the leap. But I also was moving overseas. And so I had arrived in Bali, starting out. It was the start of a 12-month stint overseas all over the world. So literally arrived the first day and got my acceptance email. So that really put a big spanner in the works for me. So coming back was a really big decision as to whether or not, I thought this was going to be, the trade-off was worth it. And I'm so glad I did. So I came in with literally no expectations. I didn't even know that I needed a co-founder in the program. So very early on, it's steep learning curve, but it was just perfect for me. It was exactly what I was looking for. I think the support and the environment is just, if you're a bit of a startup nerd, it's just, you're in heaven. So I really loved that whole process and found out I needed a co-founder very early on, and I met Katsu. So she is awesome. We actually had a connection outside of Antler, but we'd never actually met. So she was in Sydney, I was in Melbourne, and I think from about week 2 onwards, we just were peas in a pod, and we've sort of stayed that way ever since. So yeah, it was an awesome experience, and I really just think, you get out what you put in, but being surrounded by such awesome people to facilitate, it's just, yeah, you can really achieve so much in such a short time.
And so what was the ideation process that led to yesterday like with you and Katsu? Because I remember that she was working on a few different ideas and she wasn't sure. And potentially, if I remember correctly, you were maybe the same. So like, how did you guys like zero in on what you're currently working on?
Yeah, so prior to Antler, we had built lots of tech. So we'd gone gut feel, I think a mobile game or a Chrome extension or an e-commerce store, you name it, we did it. We would just be really building all the time because we loved the process, but we were never really focusing too much on validation. So coming into Antler and knowing that, there was venture capital on the table, I wanted to be so confident in the problem that I was solving. So I'd worked in recruitment for startups, so very high growth companies, and I'd worked almost as a consultant to the founders, really understanding the nuances of their pain points and then really, I guess, helping form the roles from there, or advising, etc. And then obviously finding the talent. So I saw how inefficient that process was. coming into recruitment with no background in recruitment. And I just really felt that there was so much to solve there. And so I positioned that to Kat in about week 2, and she was on board. She'd hired for hundreds of roles in the past. So it was a good fit. But yeah, we definitely she came in with a product that she'd been working on, but she definitely didn't want to pursue that as a VC product. And I came in with really just a whole heap of little random ideas. So yeah, that was a really nice marriage of, we felt that it had VC legs, significant problem to solve, and we were the right people to do it. So that's really how we formulated the problem area, and then how we actually arrived on the solution was really just through the awesome Antler process of continual validation, feedback, etc.
Cool. So yeah, perfect time. Like, give us the elevator pitch. What is Yesterday? What's the problem that you guys are solving?
Yeah, so Yesterday tackles the recruitment industry's inefficiency and bias. So we're really focusing on automating as much of the process as possible, whilst also optimizing for the candidate experience as well, and really focusing on our values of reducing bias, diversity and inclusion. So we're AI driven, streamline much of the process. Specifically at the moment, we've built for screening, but we're looking to expand on that. So yeah.
And I'm going to probably ask the same question of you, Ben. But Millie, like, when you say HR tech, there's 1,000 tools out there, right? I don't want to say it's like a saturated market, but like, how did you get cut through with investors? Like, and what was your kind of like point of difference there that you really drilled down on?
Yeah, so I like, one piece of advice before I answer that question is, if you are getting that feedback, take it on board. So I was really, I knew how saturated HR tech was, and I didn't take that lightly. So how we combated that, I would say it's almost one of the most saturated VC tech niches. How we mitigated for increasing confidence in us and our solution was, we did so much validation. So we did like 100 user interviews in like a matter of weeks. And I guess we just really continued to convey our subject matter expertise, and really did everything that we could to instill confidence. So for example, we got 4 LOIs before we went to IC. So we just did anything that we could to mitigate anyone's concern that we were coming into a saturated space and we didn't have a really promising solution, and we weren't the right people.
Yeah. Okay. And Ben, I guess similar line of questioning for you. I remember, when you guys came back in, on the surface, you're like AI, video player, dubbing, translation, all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, we've seen a bunch of, not that we personally have seen a bunch of these, but like, it's in the zeitgeist. There's a bunch of these getting around the internet. Like, how were you able to demonstrate, a point of difference?
Yeah, there's probably 3 core points to that answer. And I'll just say it up front, one of them is very much inspired by Millie's journey, actually. So thank you, Millie. I don't think I've told you that. Firstly, from my background, I worked at Apple, so I've drunk a lot of Kool-Aid. UI, UX focus, like, it has to be amazing to use. It has to be easy and intuitive to use. It can't be a burden. Okay, so that's one element. That's probably the element that comes from myself. The element that comes from James's perspective, so James, my co-founder, who's also on the call, I believe, it's around the automation and the integrations. Most of the translation or caption solutions out there, and especially the dubbing solutions out there, they are fragmented, they are standalone solutions or platforms that don't really tie into anything else. They're just another thing that people have to worry about. So taking those 2 elements, the UI, UX, the automation and integration, that's how Braiv has come to become what it is. because we're obsessed with the user experience. But the third point, and this is, Millie, this is literally inspired from the conversations that you and I have had as part of both of our journeys, is validation. Just have as many conversations as possible. So once we'd figured out our target customer base, I went out and, hashtag be shameless, spoke to as many people in that field that I could possibly speak to, and just pinpointing all of the pain points that they're currently having. And you'd be amazed at how fragmented and how hacky organizations, especially SMBs, so small to medium businesses, the things that they're doing to try and get this output. And so at the end of the day, you take that advice, if you will, all those conversations that you have in market, and you have as many of them as you can, and you formulate how your platform is going to solve for that and make their lives easier. Because at the end of the day, time is money, and people will pay to make their lives easier. And that is what we came to find out. And thank you, Millie, for the inspiration for just as many conversations as possible. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, one comment that I would like to make, because, I hear that kind of feedback from a lot of people, and I think often people have this thing in their mind where they're like, oh, if I go out and speak to 100 people, I'm going to get 99 rejections, and it's going to be like this sales thing, and it's going to be like really grindy. But I think if you are actually trying to solve someone's problem legitimately, and they can offer you unique advice or their own expertise, you'd be very surprised how willing people are to give you half an hour of their time. Like if you go out and send 100 responses, like don't be surprised if 50 people are happy to give you 30 minutes, right? And so it's not actually this terribly daunting thing once you get into it. It's just a matter of going out there and having the conversations, right? Like, did you guys get that type of feedback response, or was it 99 rejections for every one person who was happy to speak to you?
I would say I've spent a lot more time since Antler validating, and every setback we've had, we've gone back and done more user research. So I would say it's really, if you can't get people to have the conversation, there should be a concern that the problem's not significant enough. When the problem is so big that you're saying to someone, I'd love, tell me about, like, for example, Joel, tell me about something that you hate in your day-to-day work. It's probably something that you're willing to talk about because it's painful. So if you're getting significant pushback from a specific market, and I would be really strategic in outlining the market that you're going out for and only targeting that market before you move to the next one. If you're not getting enough response and people willing to have a conversation, that's probably an indicator that it's not a big enough problem. But yeah, there will be a lot of rejection. You're asking people for their time. I think though, something I did learn is that people are ultimately super supportive, and they love helping founders, and they love almost having that involvement in someone else's creation of their business. So just, I guess, be really respectful of someone's time, give them a clear agenda, and just ask, like, you've got to ask hundreds of people to get hundreds of calls, but it's the most valuable use of your time, honestly.
Cool. So just a reminder, guys, please feel free to jump in with any questions. You can either put them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, you are very welcome. I'm, the type of person who can ask questions all day. I've got a bunch more questions for these guys. But does anyone have any questions jumping to mind? It could also be about Antler if you have a question for me. But certainly, whilst we've got Millie and Ben here, it'd be great if anyone's got any questions for them. Marvin, go for it. You can come off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joel. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing. for Millie and Ben. And I guess you guys emphasize on validation. And is there any certain interview templates or guidelines, I would say, for us to get some guide to do the user interview in the beginning?
I've actually spent a lot of time on this recently. So we had a big setback earlier this year. So we've spent extensive amount of the last few months doing customer research. And there is really an art to it. And I would say you have to be very, I guess, tactful in how you ask the questions and let the user speak. So basically you're identifying an area that you want to talk to them about and then ask them what are essentially the pain points within that. So there's like a way in which I do it, and you can definitely, there's lots of resources online. But I would say that art is really in asking for the interview, because you don't want to give too much information whereby you're creating like a bias in the way in which, or the problem that the person's going to talk about. So I'd say it's really more important in how you ask for the interview, and then really let it be a conversation. So respond to someone's problem, and then also summarize what they're saying. So you keep making them feel confident that you're listening, and also allowing for them to clarify what they're trying to say as well. So yeah, it's really quite vague, but you do have to have that responsiveness.
Anything you want to add there, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to answer the question in a very short manner, I'd say there's no template, in my opinion. There's no template, and I'll give you the reasons why. Because at the end of the day, this is not a sales interaction, and that's something that, you know, hopefully, if you're not a salesperson by trade, that helps to rest your weary head. You're asking for insights. You're asking for people's advice or people's insights, and people tend to love to give that, you know, through various forms of human psychology. But the reason I would personally say there's no template to that is because it's an evolving practice. Yeah. You'll have that first conversation and you listen, and you listen good. And you might get something back to you that makes you go, oh, okay, tell me more. And that's going to inform how the next conversation goes. And the next, because it's not a matter of rejection. It's a matter of learning. It's a matter of being told, no, that's not a problem for me at all. Okay, cool, thanks. I've learned that now. And so now I'm going to readjust and I'm going to evolve. And so for that reason alone, there's no template. The only element of it that it is a template is that it's not a sales call. You're not selling it. You haven't even got a product. You're working out what that product is. So you're just asking for someone's insights and pain points, and, you know, potentially even what keeps them up at night. And you'd be so surprised how many people are willing to have that conversation, especially if you're buying the coffee.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Well, thank you for the question, Marvin. Kashab, we'll go to you. Please feel free to ask your question.
Thanks, Joel. It was actually the same validation stuff that lots of people has already, Millie and Ben already answered. That was the question I wanted to ask. However, the following one would be how you decide how big the problem is.
How do you decide?
Yeah, how big the problem is. And the second question would be for Joel. For the, like, I think you mentioned that 3 category of founders you are looking for. When I
He's dropped out.
Dropped out. All right, we'll come back to Kashab if he joins again. Doi, we'll go to you.
Hey fellas, thanks for your time today. My name is Doi. Nice to meet you all. So just a question with respect to market validation. So my technical co-founder and I have identified a problem in the B2B space. It's a problem that I've dealt with myself, and he's helped build somewhat an MVP for me to help me with my job too. And I know what kind of problem we're solving already. we've interviewed quite a number of people, and we have a really quite a detailed idea of what needs to be built out. We want to start our next cohort of interviews, and we want to just try to balance. We want to know, like, should we be more open in the interviews next and get them to tell us what their problem is, or can we kind of assert the solution a little bit already with my own experience and my experience with the other interviews, the previous interviews that we've done already. So we're just trying to balance it out. You know, we don't want to be too biased in providing a solution already, but we kind of have a fair idea of what that solution looks like already. So I'd like to get your perspective on, you know, how do you find the balance between those two?
I can probably answer that one very well, because you can learn from our mistakes. We majorly mucked up when we initially started doing user research interviews, because we started with wireframes. So we showed them, and we can almost completely scrap all of that time and energy spent on our initial customer research interviews. So I would say process that we follow now is first conversation, general, asking them about their pain points, understand how painful the problem is, what they've done to solve it to date. And then also gauge their interest. So how willing were they to talk to you? Did, you know, the interview run over? How excited were they by you potentially trying to solve this problem? Gauge that, and then ask for potentially a follow-up interview. In that follow-up interview, clarify anything that you want further input on, and then show your product and actually gauge, I guess, their willingness for that solution. And then if it's appropriate, because this is where you're also really mindful of, it's not a sales conversation, and you don't want to make someone feel like they've been tricked into buying something. If appropriate and they really feel that strong desire to use what you've built, then you can turn it into potentially, okay, how can I leverage that for traction, either a pilot or you know, a paying customer. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely that two-step approach, I think, is the most appropriate, so that you're getting accurate information.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Millie. The only thing I would add, and it's a big if, right? So, and this is what helped us, especially with Braiv, was because Braiv is very different to what it was at the beginning of our interviews or our insight calls or meetings. If you have an idea, or if you believe you have the solution, you know, I personally wouldn't go to the point of doing wireframes and stuff, but, you know, you ask the questions, you make sure the pain points exist, you front run the conversations with that. But if you are wanting to validate the solution, you inherently do need to talk about what your current solution looks like, or your idea for that solution looks like. If you're not bringing that into the conversation at some point, you're not validating it, really. And this comes down to those 99 rejections versus the one, you know, acceptance. It's like, yeah, so our very quick story on ours. We thought that our go-to-market would be for Braiv was going to be for real estate agents, because where I live, real estate agents need interpreters for a lot of, you know, Asian-speaking customers and whatnot. And so I took this idea to real estate agents, and guess what? 99% of them said, nah, don't want to use anything other than YouTube, too much of a hassle, rah, rah, rah. And so we went back to the drawing board. And that has inferred not just our product, but also our prospective customer base and who we're now focusing our energy on towards. So I guess to sum it up, if you have an idea for what that solution is and you want to validate it, yes, you do have to bring that into the conversation. But yes, as Millie says, you also do need to front run the conversation with having them tell them their pain points for all the reasons Millie said.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, because we do chat about this a lot in the residency. There's a book that gets recommended a lot called The Mum Test, MOM, like American spelling. And it is all about customer interviews and how to do this type of validation and you know, how to basically not lead the witness, like what you're saying, because obviously if you're going into it telling them that this is the solution, part of the problem is, as Millie kind of mentioned before, people are generally pretty nice about these things. And so they're often just going to be like, oh yeah, fantastic. Like great solution. Yep. That's definitely going to work. All good. Yeah. I'll 100% pay for this. And often it's more of a platitude than actually them giving you useful feedback, right? So the way that you ask the questions and how you actually get that validation is important. Cool. I think we'll go to Tom because he had his hand up first. So yeah, go for it, Tom.
Hey, sorry, I came in a bit late because my computer wasn't working, so apologies. That's why I was called Eloise for a while. Apologies if I've got this wrong in terms of asking this sort of question. We're actually at a point where we've got the problem absolutely down pat. We've got the solution. We've done the research. We've done the validation. We've got people to do a version as if the app was live, and we've had ridiculous results through the lot. We're at a point now where we're actually trying really to find a CTO founder to hop on board, and that's what drew me to you guys essentially. And I'm trying to figure out how's best to go about this. Is really where we're at. We've got half a team, but we haven't got the full team, and we're at a point trying to navigate that, and if this is the right process, and that's kind of how I've landed it.
Yeah, sure. So just to reiterate, the question is how to find a CTO.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll give a little bit of a spiel, and then maybe Ben can add, because you found your CTO outside of the Antler program, I believe. All right, you go first. How did you find your CTO?
No, I definitely found my CTO through Antler.
Okay.
It just so happened that my CTO, James, so much love for that guy. He was in a previous cohort. I've technically been on 2 cohorts. He's technically been on 3 because he joined my first cohort and then the second cohort. So it was through Antler. So thank you, Antler, and thank you, James, for being awesome. I would say that the first priority for an Antler cohort, and I'm sorry, Joel, I'm probably stepping on your toes here a bit, but I'm just going to do me. The first priority is the networking with fellow founders. And you'll know pretty swift if there are bodies within that cohort that are going to fit your ideal, or currently what thought is your current, your ideal profile for a CTO. So I don't know how the cohorts have changed now. So Joel, definitely over to you for that. But yeah, finding a co-founder in Antler is one of the first things you do as part of all the activities. So for me, I'd say yes, do it. It's the first thing. If it ain't right for you, it's cool. It doesn't matter. But it's the first thing you do. So it's worth it just for that.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the kind of main reasons why a lot of people do join Antler. It's to find a co-founder, and it's not always, a technical founder. They may be looking for a commercial founder or vice versa. So I guess my advice there, Tom, is, please feel free to apply if you haven't already. It sounds like you're still in the stage that makes sense to be in a residency. Of course, if you for whatever reason you don't get in, or you can't find the right technical founder, through Antler, then realistically it is just about hitting the streets and, getting out there on any kind of social media networks, and really kind of looking for that person who, is going to be able to provide value for your business.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for that.
All right. Let's go to Mandy. Mandy, you are welcome to come off mute and ask your question. Mandy Gal, are you there? We can't hear you. All right, let's go back. Welcome back, Kishab. I'm not sure what happened before. We did miss your question. I believe the first part was how do you know if the problem's big enough? And then you had a second question, which we didn't actually catch.
So the second question would be how the Antler select. You mentioned early there are 3 categories you choose, but is there any limit every year? So you need to just fill out the certain number of quota, something that you are only looking for certain number of people every year, or how it works?
Yeah, I'll give you a bit more information about our selection process. So we generally get thousands of applications to Antler Australia, hundreds of thousands if you look at the worldwide process. And so at least the way that it works in Australia is there is multiple interview stages. So there's a screening call, which we will try to understand a little bit more about your situation, what you're interested in. And then if you make it through that, we have what we call a founder DNA interview and a spike interview. If you're successful in both of those interviews, there's a final interview with one of our general partners. And, realistically, I guess what we're looking for are people who do have the drive and the potential to build, large VC backable businesses. In terms of numbers, there's no set amount that we're looking for, but generally most residencies will have around 75 founders in each one. Sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little bit less, but it's going to be somewhere between 65 and say 90 people. So out of the thousands that apply, it really is only the top handful of percent of people that get in. And I guess to answer your first question, just if I can reiterate it, is how do you know if the market or the problem is big enough? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no magic number really here, or there's not any specific way to do it because, if you think about it, if you are able to take a very small percentage of a massive, massive market, that's one way to do it. Or you could be the dominant player in a very, very small market, and that's another way to do it, right? So I guess in general, the way that you want to think about it is that VCs generally want to back businesses that at least have the potential to be, large businesses in the coming, 5 to 10 year time horizon. Now, that is another really important part. We have a very long time horizon. We are happy to invest in businesses that aren't going to be hitting their strides for, 10 years. But in general, you do want to be able to building a business that has the potential of, $100 million of revenue in 10 years, right? I guess for Ben or Millie, do you guys have any input into how you sized up the market and, going through that process?
Yeah, so I would say, aside from obviously size of the market, which Antler do really well, they teach you how to really understand that opportunity, because if you go down the VC route, that's something that you'll constantly be having to answer to, is size of the market if you're wanting to raise in future. But I would also say it's a problem that there is significant demand that you can actually demonstrate really early traction, and potentially really early traction with people that are willing to pay. So it's not just, I guess, the size of the market, it's also understanding the beachhead that you're working in and understanding what's their ability to pay, what does that lead time look like. So really understanding that you feel this is a market that you can get traction with quickly, you can demonstrate that traction, and that obviously there's also that global opportunity as well. Otherwise, it's not a VC business.
Yeah, my advice in how to figure it out is, again, it's just all those conversations, but it's, there's that kind of big golden kind of $100 million ARR number. And it's would that many people spend money on your product that you reach that level of annual recurring revenue? Is that viable based on the customer base you're looking at, or the product, or again, the problem you're solving? And you're only going to find those things out from having those conversations. But there is one other element to that as well, which I figured out, again, thanks to my CTO, James, because he's much better with the numbers and the spreadsheets. I'm terrified of those. Because one of the best exercises we did was the financial model, which inherently is, right, if we sell a product at this level, how many customers do we need by this time frame, by this time frame to hit those metrics that you eventually hit that 100 million in whatever it is, 7 years, 10 years. And that ended up being the most valuable exercise as part of our due diligence phase. And again, I'm petrified of giant spreadsheets. I hate them. James seems to be just awesome at it. But what it's done is it's helped us realize, okay, well, by the end of year one, we need just 200 paying customers at this price point to be able to be on the track to where we see our revenue going. And what that inherently did was then was like, okay, Ben, is that viable from a sales perspective? The answer was yes. So here we are. If it was, oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to get that many people to even get close to getting to that big target, then that would have maybe considered alternative routes or whatever. But that exercise alone helped us to visualize what we needed to do to get to that magic number, and therefore it was a problem worth solving and was going to bring in the revenue that we require.
Fantastic. Maybe you can add that to your LinkedIn, Ben. Great with words, terrible with numbers, something like that.
I'll be not great with words either, but
but yeah, I just reiterate what Millie said. Like, these are some of the things that we will actually teach during the residency program, like how to go about sizing up a market. There are a bunch of different ways to do it. You know, what makes sense for your business. And, you know, obviously, like, you're doing this not only for yourself, but for the investors as well. So we're able to really, you know, give you that, you know, opinion of what an investor is going to be looking for when you're talking about, you know, sizing your market. All right, great. So I just want to try and get through a couple of these questions that are in the chat box. So Craig asks, you know, when we're doing your user research, how do you not give up too much IP? I mean, I have my opinions on this. I think in general, like, most people that you speak to aren't going to be motivated enough to steal your idea in its infancy. And so I wouldn't really be worried so much about giving up IP. Do you, Millie or Ben, have any points to add there?
Something that has stuck in my mind, and I think about it literally like every day, because something that whenever you're talking to someone and I tell them about my startup or what have you, I always get the question like, oh, aren't you scared someone's going to steal it? And I think it was week 1 in Antler, someone said to me, if you're not the right person to execute, and I can't remember how it was worded, but it was so perfect. It was like, if you're worried someone can steal it, if you're worried someone can steal your idea, you're not the right person to execute it. And so that is now something that, who cares? Like, no one, and that's, I guess, a really steep learning curve with Antler is you're working with founders every day. Everyone's trying to build a business. If you're the right person to do it, you're not concerned that someone's going to take that idea and run with it, because your team has the subject matter expertise and the ability to execute.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Sorry.
So spot on. Yeah, it's all about execution. Not everyone's going to, you're going to a customer base to ask about their pain points. My customers aren't rebuilding the solution we're building. Like, they just don't. And if they are, they should be building a startup, not doing what they're doing. It's all about, do you have the acumen to execute, the foresight, the strategy, everything else? It's the whole package. So I never had an issue with telling people about what we're building, because only we, me and James and the now growing team, know how we want to execute it.
Absolutely.
Okay, I've just got 2 more questions. There's a few that I'm going to miss, guys. I'm sorry. I do want to respect everyone's time. But Mandy has asked, is it worth applying if you don't have an MVP? And then Mark has mentioned, is it worth applying if you don't have a founder. So I guess the answer to both questions is like, yes, like please apply. If you are in doubt, please apply. Like we can accept people in lots of different situations. Sometimes they have an MVP. Sometimes people have no idea what they want to build. Sometimes people come to Antler, you know, like Ben did, with a pretty well-formed idea and a team. So, you know, if in doubt, please apply, or feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. So we will probably have to leave it there, guys, because I do want to respect everyone's time. Thank you so much for everybody who joined today. It's been fantastic. I just want to let you know again that this is the first of a series of AMAs that we're going to be doing over the next couple of months as we lead into our residency starting in August. And again, huge thanks to Millie and Ben for giving up your time today. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining, and hope you have a fantastic day.
Thank you. Good
Thanks,
luck.
everyone.
Bye.